Hello there, students. Today we are going to do a review over adjectives and adverbs based off of some of the comments that were given last week on the Flipgrid videos. I have chosen to do short sections on both of the topics from last week's assignment. So let's take a look at my slideshow of review. Alrighty, I will remove myself. And away we go. Okay, so adjectives and adverbs, a review. Okay, so let's look at adjectives first. An adjective are going to modify a noun or a pronoun. So in both the adjectives and adverbs sections, my advice to you is to locate the nouns and the pronouns first. Know where they are, because if you're looking for adjectives, you know that it's going to impact what you found. If you're looking for adverbs, which we'll talk about later, you can remove those nouns and pronouns because you know that the adverbs are not going to be modifying them. On its most basic level, adjectives are just going to make nouns more specific. They give more information that limits their meaning. You know, in sentences, if you remove an adjective, it technically would still make sense. The tense might be messed up and you might need an article to make it sound correct, but it would just be less specific. Make sure you also always look for the articles a, an, and the. All three of those are adjectives. If you see them, they are an adjective in the sentence. So just a real simple example. So Ted wears hats. Ted wears hats is a sentence, but there's not a whole lot of information about the two nouns that are in that sentence. But if I add adjectives to it, Coach Ted wears a red and black team hat. Technically, I still have the same two nouns and I still have the same verb. Ted wears hats. I just changed the tense of it. But now I have more information about Ted. Well, Ted is a coach. He's Coach Ted. And I have more information about the hat as well. It is a red and black team hat. So by adding those 5 adjectives into the sentence, I gave it more meaning. I made it more specific. But again, if I remove those out of there, I go back to the original sentence, which was Ted wears hats. Still makes sense, it's just less specific. Okay, let's take a look at a few examples. So here's one that you had on your assignment last week. Storing and preserving food was necessary to sustain large numbers of non-farming people. Okay, so first, find the nouns and pronouns. What are our nouns and pronouns in this sentence? So if I look through the sentence, I'm looking for the nouns. The 3 nouns that I find are food, numbers, and people. So now that I know what the 3 nouns are, I can look to see if there are any words that are adding further meaning to them. What adjectives exist that help add more meaning to food, to numbers, and to people? So I look at food first. So the word necessary is added to food. We don't technically need it, but it adds more information to the sentence to let us know that it was absolutely a needed element in this world that they're living in. It is necessary food, which means that that is an adjective because it is modifying the noun food. I think that was the most difficult of this sentence. The other 2 are directly in front of their nouns, which you will see a lot of the time. So we know that if we took out the word large, numbers would still make sense, but large numbers gives us more information, meaning that large is an adjective. And they describe the people by calling them non-farming people. So non-farming is also an adjective. But let's test the removal method that I talked about. So if I take out those words, if I take out necessary, large, and non-farming, does it still make sense as a sentence? Maybe the tenses are wrong, but does it still make sense? Storing and preserving food was to sustain numbers of people. It's still technically a sentence. It's definitely not as specific as it was before, but it is still a sentence. So hopefully you're seeing kind of how I'm walking through this process. I identify the nouns first. That helps me locate what words are trying to be modified, and then I look for the adjectives that modify those nouns or pronouns. Okay, let's look at another one. So here's another one that a lot of you struggled with last week on the assignment. And there are a couple tricky ones in there. This was definitely the most challenging of the adjective questions. So here's the sentence. Since it depended on the outlying areas for supplies, each city had to dominate and defend its entire region against enemies. So again, the first thing that I did was I just found the nouns and the pronouns. So I went through. It is a pronoun, areas, supplies, city. Its is a possessive pronoun, region, and enemies. So there are a lot of nouns and pronouns in this sentence. I think in part why it is kind of tricky. But then we can look through each specific noun and pronoun and decide whether or not it is being modified by an adjective. So I look through each one. The first one, since it depended. Well, we're not really sure what it even is. There's no added detail to it to give us more information to help modify it. We're going to find out more about it later, but we don't know what it is. So in this case, it does not have an adjective attached to it. There are none there. Areas, another one that I think many of you got outlying correct. You know, you're looking for those adjectives that are right before the noun, which makes a lot of sense. So outlying is 100% one of the adjectives in this sentence. But don't forget that a, an, and the are also considered adjectives. So the outlying areas. So the and outlying would both be considered adjectives here. If I removed the word outlying and I just had the areas, the would still be an adjective. So both of those should have been written down as answers. Supplies doesn't have any further extra information to add more definition to it. It's just supplies. City, the word each is an adjective. So this is, again, it's adding more information to the word city. We know that they're breaking it down city by city. Each city was responsible for dominating and defending. If it just said cities, then that might mean they're working together. But this tells us that each city, each one on its own, was responsible for its own region and its own enemies. So each is a modifying adjective to the word city. Now, this was the most tricky one, I think. Because it is a possessive pronoun, its here is actually being used as an adjective because it's showing ownership over region. Now, obviously, there's another word there that almost all of you got correct, entire. Entire is the clear adjective here. It's the entire region. But because it shows possession of region, its is also an adjective. So its and entire are both adjectives as well. And then enemies does not have any further information supplied here to add adjectives to it. So there's a lot to unload there. I know, as we're going through it here, I wish I was in the classroom with you so that I could draw lines and show you different things and how this sentence is broken up. There are definitely two different clauses here and so on and so forth. But I'm hoping by looking at this sentence, you can kind of see by looking at the pronouns and nouns first, I'm at least getting rid of some elements that I don't even need to look at. Hopefully that kind of helps you boil it down to a more specific item that you can figure out. Now I'm testing the removal method on this one. Since it depended on areas for supplies, city had to dominate and defend region against enemies. So again, the tenses are kind of strange here, but technically if I changed some of the tenses to be plural, it would make more sense. So since it depended on areas for supplies, cities had to dominate and defend regions against enemies. That is a perfectly fine sentence. I've removed all of the adjectives from it. I've just had to, make a few words plural, and it still makes sense. So hopefully if you look through it, remove the pieces that you have identified, if it still seems to make sense, you're probably on the right track. But if you're all over the place and like there's words missing that need to be there, more than likely they're not adjectives. All right, let's try one on our own. So this is a new one. The city officials collected the surplus food and distributed it among the workers. So go through the process of elimination. Find the nouns and pronouns. I've given you a hint here. There are 4 of them in this sentence. And then ask yourself, which of those nouns and pronouns in this sentence have words that make them more specific? Those are those magical adjectives that you're looking for. What words make those nouns more specific? And then what are the adjectives in the sentence? There are 4 of them. Once you think you have found them, test the removal method. See if removing them, the sentence still makes sense. Give you a couple seconds here to try to figure it out. Okay. So there are 3 nouns and 1 pronoun in the sentence. The 3 nouns are officials, food, and workers. And it is the pronoun. And I did not circle it on this because there are no adjectives that are modifying the pronoun it in this sentence. So we've boiled it down to officials, food, and workers. Now, I said that there are 4 adjectives in this sentence. If the 4 adjectives you found were the city, surplus, and the, you are correct. So don't forget that the is an adjective. A, and the are all adjectives. Many of you probably got city and surplus correct because they are directly in front of their noun, which is very often what happens with adjectives. But don't forget the as well. And then I test the removal method. Officials collected the food and distributed among workers. So I added the in there for food just to try to help it make a little bit more sense. But technically, officials collected food and distributed it among workers. Makes sense. So if I remove those 4 adjectives that I found, the city, surplus, and the, it still makes sense. Okay, that's adjectives. Let's take a look at adverbs. Now, adverbs was definitely the section that more people commented on as struggling in terms of the words that they were modifying. So again, let's try to kind of find out a strategy to help you identify the words that they are modifying as well. So adverbs are going to modify verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. Now, obviously, in this exercise, you're not going to identify other adverbs. I only pick sentences that they were identifying and modifying verbs. It's kind of hard to find an adverb and then also find the adverb that it is modifying to. So in this case, all you're looking for are adverbs that modify verbs and adjectives. Now, the best advice that I can give you is there are always special circumstances, but for the most part, most adverbs end with ly or y. So if you're looking through a sentence and you're looking for adverbs and you're seeing several words that end with ly or y, more than likely, those are going to be your adverbs. So let's look at the exact same sentence again from the previous cover page. Ted wears hats. So in this case, I know the adverb is not going to modify Ted or hats. It's going to modify the verb. So if I add an adverb to this sentence, Ted wears hats stylishly, I know that the adverb stylishly, which of course is ending in an ly, is modifying wears, the verb. Just like adjectives, if I remove the adverbs from the sentence, it will be less specific, but it will still make sense. So obviously, if I removed stylishly, the sentence would still read Ted wears hats. Makes sense, it's just less specific. Okay, let's take a look at a couple examples. Okay, so here's one that was on your assignment last week. Mitch handles his tape player carelessly. So I'm still having you do the exact same thing, and I do the exact same thing as well. Find the nouns and pronouns just like you were with your adjectives, and then remove them. So I find that the nouns and pronouns in this sentence are Mitch, his, and player. So I blacked them out. I got rid of Mitch, I got rid of his, and I got rid of player. And all I have left are handles, tape, and carelessly. Now that I only have 3 words remaining, it helps me identify what each one of those are. I know that handles is a verb because Mitch is handling his tape player. That is the action in the sentence. So that's a verb. I know that tape is an adjective because it is adding more information to the word player. And then I see that ly on the end of carelessly, and I think it's pretty safe to assume that that's going to be my adverb. But the question is, because most of you identified carelessly correctly as the adverb, what word is it modifying? Is it modifying handles or tape? Those are my only 2 options. Well, ask yourself the question, what did he do carelessly? Did he carelessly tape or did he carelessly handle? In this case, he carelessly handles the tape player, so it is modifying the verb. Another huge piece of advice is, in order for an adverb to modify an adjective, it has to be directly before it. So in this case, the fact that it is at the end of the sentence means that it is going to modify a verb. So this adverb, carelessly, modifies the verb handles. Let's look at another example. The teacher had an unusually quiet classroom. So this was another one from last week. Just as always, I identify the noun and the pronouns in this sentence. There are 2, teacher and classroom, and then I black them out because I know that the adverbs are not going to modify of anything of the nouns or the pronouns. So all I have left is the, had, and unusually and quiet. Well, remember, adjectives, the, a, and an are adjectives, so I know the and an are both adjectives in this sentence. That means that all I have left are had and quiet. I need a verb to have a total sentence. Had in this case is the verb. Quiet is adding more information to the noun classroom, so it is an adjective as well. Again, I have that magical word with an ly at the end. It's safe for me to assume that that is my adverb. Most of you identified the word unusually as the adverb, but you struggled with what it was modifying. So remember the rule that I talked about last question. If it is directly in front of an adjective, it means that it could possibly be modifying that adjective. Well, in this case, it is in front of an adjective, the adjective quiet. Now, more than likely, it's not going to modify the or an. So we're really looking between had and quiet. In this case, the best answer is it is modifying the word quiet. Something was unusually quiet. That adds more information to that adjective. So in this case, the correct answer would be your adverb was unusually. The word that it modifies is quiet. All right, let's try one on our own. The seriously injured player was carried to an ambulance. So find the nouns and the pronouns and remove them. There are two. Then I wrote the sentence there again. The seriously injured player was carried to an ambulance, because of course I'm going to black out the two nouns / pronouns that I find. Then you're going to find the verbs and the adjectives. There are 4. Then you're going to tell me what the adverb is and what it modifies. If you're looking at this sentence and you're thinking, well, hold on a second, Mr. Mack, there are more than 4 verbs and adjectives in this sentence. Remember that often there are verb phrases that is in play here. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, so the sentence again was the seriously injured player was carried to an ambulance. I find the nouns and the pronouns and I remove them. I know that my noun and my pronouns here are player and ambulance. So I remove them. All I have left was the seriously injured was carried to an. So then I look for the verbs and the adjectives. I know that the is an adjective. I know that an is an adjective. All I have left was injured and was carried to. I know that I need to have a verb in order for it to be a complete sentence. The verb phrase here, was carried to, is my verb, which means all I have left is injured and seriously. Injured is an adjective to the noun player. It's adding more information to that noun. And again, I have that magical ly at the end of that word, seriously. The fact that the ly is there means that it's pretty safe to assume that that's my adverb in this sentence, but I still need to find out what it is modifying. Now again, more than likely, it's not going to be modifying the word the or an, so I have to ask what seriously is attached to. Does seriously injured make more sense, or seriously was carried to? Well, just by saying both of those out loud, I'm hoping that seriously injured goes ding, 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 ding in your head, and you're like, wow, that makes a lot more sense. In this case, seriously, the adverb is modifying the adjective injured. Okay. So that is adjectives and adverbs. Hopefully I've given you some planning and ideas to help you identify them. My best advice to you is always start with the nouns and the pronouns. Try to identify those first. If you're looking for adjectives, keep them. Know that they're going to modify those. And if you are looking for adverbs, get rid of them because you know that they're not going to be in play, and then move from there. I will post this video up as well as the slides for you to look through, for you to peruse and to help you. As always, if you have questions, you can ask me on our office hours from 2 to 3 o'clock on Wednesday and Friday. Email me. Either way, I will get back to you as quick as possible. And then for this week, you're going to look at prepositions. All you're going to look at is prepositions. A preposition shows the relationship of a noun or a pronoun to some other word in the sentence. So you'll be looking at prepositional phrases and how prepositions and their objects function within the sentence, but that's the only piece that you're going to be looking at. At this point, you're almost to the point where you know all of the different pieces of a sentence. Hopefully you see that we're building up to, at the very end of the semester, looking at an assignment where you're going to have to identify different parts of speech within sentences. It's my firm belief that by knowing how sentences break down and how you can pull them apart and extrapolate them, that it will help you become better writers and better readers. It's important to know how sentence structure works. Cannot stress this enough. If you have questions, use Khan Academy videos. Even myself, I am using them to go on and review and look at things that they are teaching. I think they're really well put together. I think the guy has a nice sense of humor that I enjoy, at least. But I think he does a nice job of laying out all of the different parts of speech and how they're used in their sentences. So if you're feeling confused, take the 4 or 5 minutes, watch the videos. I think they're going to help you. And then follow the instruction provided on the prepositions assignment. It's a self-grading assignment. Make sure you're checking your spelling. This week on Flipgrid, you'll tell me what you struggled with on prepositions, and then I'll provide a feedback video with more further learning next week on prepositions, just like this one is today. Okay, stop sharing. I know this was a long video today. I hope many of you sit through it and watch it because I put a lot of time into this one because I do know adjectives and adverbs can be tricky. So let me know if you have any questions. Please, please, please email me and I will be more than happy to help you. Be smart, be safe, be Gopher great. I miss you guys a ton. See ya.